guys. Black History of Rock and Roll month. Gonna wait for Brother Tyrone. Have to wear my Disturbulence t-shirt. Yeah, I always give props to the band's shirts that I have on and stuff. This happens to be my own. My own grindcore band from the 90s, or there's so many different things that people have called it. But yeah, it's pretty interesting, weird, psychedelic grindcore type stuff. But this ain't about me, but yeah, that's the swag that I'm wearing. Happens to be my own thing right now. Uh, let's see. Okay. Okay. Hey, is this Abba? Hey, what's up,
Yo,
Tyrone?
yo, so, uh, uh,
What
how
up,
are
OG?
we? Not much, not much.
Man, how you
Can you hear
doing,
me?
man?
Good. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I could hear you, bro. Man,
Yeah.
yo, check it out, everybody. Tyrone is in our future, bro. He's getting the Saturday before we get it.
Yeah, I'll try. I'm enjoying the sun, working on my tan, you know.
What's up, man? What's up, Abba Moses? I see you out there, brother.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, how you doing out there in down under?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, pretty good. As you can see, it's a sunny day. We're actually, like recording an EP today. I was trying to find a quiet spot in where we're recording, but I couldn't, so I just came to my car. Probably look like one of those, goateed guys in the pickup truck having a rant. Anyway. So,
Nah, you look like a clean cut dude, like a hardcore
yeah,
punk rocker to me,
yeah.
man.
Just,
Shaved hair, goatee, and glasses.
I got to call
Man,
this
so
last look going.
man, yeah, shoot, I used to have a long beard, believe it or not, man. Like, and
Yeah.
I cut it because I thought I was supposed to be in this production, and then COVID hit, and I'm like, man, I cut 7 years of a beard, and now I'm like, I'll grow it out whenever now at least I saw it before it turned gray though, so that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of waiting for the grays, to be honest. I want to be a silver fox, like distinguished gentleman, you know? Yeah. Can't wait.
Right on. Yeah, it's a trip, man. I started it's funny, when I started growing my beard out, it was all black, so I'm glad I got to see it. But then I started getting the stripe, so it looked like
Yeah.
that. You know how American Werewolf in London had that strike, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it looked like that.
That's funny.
Yeah, man. So, dude, you know, dig your band a lot. It reminds me of a lot of the stuff that I grew up on, like, stuff like No Comment, bands like, Crossed Out,
Yeah.
Infest,
Yeah.
like those are bands that, that were a part of my youth, like, and I mean, to
Same,
me,
same for
I
me
didn't
too.
even know about,
Yeah.
oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I didn't even, to be honest, I didn't even know about the term, like it was called power violence until someone had mentioned it. I just thought it was either hardcore, grindcore, or just thrash, whatever, but like,
Yeah.
I heard about that term like much later, but I still thought it was
Yeah.
cool. And then someone called one of my projects that. I'm like, I didn't even know what that was,
Yeah.
but I
We were
dig
just
that.
doing stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of like over here, it like, it was called Power Violence, and all that, but I listen to all those kind of bands, and probably like in the late 2000s, or like mid to late 2000s, there was that kind of, especially in Australia and Melbourne and whatnot, like everyone was sort of jocking that sort of power violence sound a lot, even if there wasn't a lot of bands, but like, there was Extortion's probably the main one. There was other bands as well, which probably more adjacent, like Earthlings and Type N and things like that as well. But yeah, it was pretty popular, and then obviously around that sort of towards that later 2000s as well. Ceremony was quite big and stuff as well, and they, before they sort of changed their sound. So yeah, I kind of grew up on that stuff, and when I decided to do Persecutor, I was like, oh, I like to do.
Oops. Oh man, it's tripping. Ah, man, Instagram, don't do this to me. Ah. Oh, okay. Tyrone is kind of Oh man, I don't know what's going on, brother. We in suspended animation right now. Oh, let's see. Let's see if I need to do something. No, I don't. Oh, oh no. Okay, let's call him again. Something happened. Um, we're gonna get him back, you guys. I don't know what went down. Let's see. Let's call the brother back. Thank you guys for coming out. Thanks a lot. Let's get the brother back. Man, yeah, I like a lot of those kind of hardcore bands, you know, because to me, when I got into hardcore, it was still known as just fast, loud, and chaotic, you know, and I still dug a lot of that stuff, and I still like it, you know. I'm in the bands like that. I mean, I play it myself, but you know, like a lot of these bands, like you know, Drop Dead, you know, like Citizens Arrest, a lot of great bands. Let's see. I don't know what happened on his end. I hope everything is good. Instagram, don't be tripping. We'll wait for him. I don't know what happened. Hope everything is cool. We're going to keep it going, though. Thank you guys for coming out. Modest Yahoo? I did. Oh, wow. Cool. Who, man.
Sorry about that, brother. Sorry. It my phone. I was in the car and my phone got too hot. It just like shut down and I was like, oh shit. Sorry about that.
It's cool, man. We're waiting for you. I know how that phone situation is crazy, especially with Instagram.
Yeah. What was I saying? So yeah, like Power Violence was kind of like pretty big when I was coming up, or people like knew about it a lot who were like more in the hardcore scene, and I sort of found out about it more when, like, as I was younger, when I was listening to like Crossed Out, and then I was listening to Gorilla Biscuits at the same time, and like, you know, because hardcore, especially at that time, hardcore was kind of like, you know, you can't just listen to everything, you know. Yeah. Whereas I think sometimes I feel like it's a bit, people sort of pick their genres or their like little scenes within scenes more now. I guess because we're sport for choice. But when I decided to do Persecutor, I kind of was like, oh, I'd done a youth crew bands. I'd done like a 90s metalcore band. I was like, nah, I like doing different styles, you know, like I don't want to, if I want to try something, I'll try something in a sort of different sound, because I like lots of different avenues of hardcore. So yeah. I can't, like, I know there's like, you know, there's people that are just one trick ponies, or like, you know, that they kind of just like a style and they're going to do that. That's fine. You know, there's place for that as well. But I like variety, you know, spice of life kind of stuff.
Yeah. How did you, if you don't mind me asking, and I'm probably going to ask you even more stuff on your history of the things that I know about you, but I wanted to start, how did you get into hardcore and punk and stuff like that? And like, what prompted you to get into that? This is kind of a weird two-part question. And what's the scene like in even Australia, as far as like, I know about the Saints and all that, but as far as like in like the Hard-Ons, I think that was probably the first Aussie band that I heard of in Thrasher magazine in like the late 80s. But like, and oh yeah, Death Sentence, another one. That's another one that they're a trip. Those guys are pretty much, you know, what people were calling grindcore too back in the day. But how did you get in the hardcore, and what like prompted you to like really like? I'm so full of questions. I'll just start with that one.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, cool. No, I'm a good talker, so like I like talking, so this is great. So I guess like the way I kind of got into it was just like a teenage kid, kind of just like, you know, a friend like Parkway Drive and As I Lie Dying and that kind of stuff. So more that metalcore kind of into stuff, Killswitch Engage and stuff. And he was like, oh, Tyronne, like, you know, oh, I go to like shows and stuff. You should come to like a metal show. I think I was like 15 or something. And then I remember just going to, I grew up in the country, in like a country sort of city. In Victoria, and we had this one place called the old fire station, which is right next to an art museum, and they sort of just had shows out every weekend, and so all the kids would go, and like it'd be like, you know, underage drinking and like all these, like, you know, just really like unregulated, just whoever's bands were touring would come. Anyway, I remember the first time I went there, and then I was like, oh, this is cool and stuff, you know, being a young young, like angsty, sort of like teenager, young man, I was like, yeah, you know, you love the vibe, you know, you like the kind of like hectic vibe that like metal, just alternative sort of shows sort of bring. And then my friend just pushed me in the mosh pit, and then I remember just getting fucking obliterated, smashed in the face and stuff. And
Oh
I was like,
man.
and it wasn't even like it wasn't like a hardcore show where like everyone's hardcore dance. It was just straight up like push pit, like metal pit where people just like punch in and stuff. And I
Yeah.
remember just being like, oh, this is sick. And then like sort of kind of just started doing that and going to shows like locally. So it was just like metal bands, like, you know, that kind of like more pop punk sort of alt rock emo kind of bands as well. And I'd say quote unquote emo, and all that kind of stuff. So it was just like whatever was around at the time. And then I sort of met some friends in the scene, and they kind of like, I always kind of liked emo as well. Like, you know, like just like, well, maybe the more mainstream emo, like Funeral for Friends and like Silverstein and like, and My Chemical Romance and later AFI and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of liked all that as well. And I had a fringe and everything. That's probably why I got no hair now. Fucking straightened my hair too much. You know, and it was that time, it was that era as well. Like a lot of like people, but I also found, I also sort of like I'd found, through a friend from Melbourne. They had showed me like bands like Seisha and stuff. So like legit, you know, OG like 90s scrams, like screamo shit and stuff. So I kind of like that too. And then I can't remember, someone at a party was like, oh, you know, you've gone to shows, and they showed me like a Gorilla Biscuit 7, and I liked that too. And then I liked like Parkway Drive and like metalcore. So I kind of just liked everything. But like, that's pretty normal when you're like a teenager. But like, yeah, and then like the touring bands would sort of like, back in that time, we kind of had we were lucky with like lots of bands, just like a lot of bands just doing rural touring a lot. So like we just go to any show kind of thing like that, you know? So that was kind of my exposure to like the alternative scene.
Yeah.
And then I sort of, you know, started like getting more into like the local hardcore bands and stuff like that. And then discovering hardcore dance and stuff. I love moshing. I still mosh. 34. I realize I've moshed for like 20 years. No wonder my knees are fucked. But yeah, I kind of like liked all that, and then started going to more shows in the city in Melbourne, and that was a very established hardcore scene, and sort of started going to shows a lot more. And then yeah, that's kind of my introduction. It was more like emo, metalcore stuff, and just metal, and then getting more into the hardcore scene and really gravitating towards the hardcore scene. I think I liked the hardcore scene a bit more because, you know, they had like mic grabs and like everyone was moshing. There was just like this energy to hardcore that I liked, that I wasn't really seeing in some other shows and stuff like that. And I like that kind of like people like, you know, get up on stage, like there's no barrier, like, you know, like, and I was like, oh, this is like, there's no difference between me and the person on stage. So I really resonated with that. And I liked a lot of the themes in hardcore is like a lot about honor and integrity and, you know, loyalty and kind of like that. And as a teenager, you know, formulating my ethics and value systems and things like that, I kind of like really like that. Whereas like I liked emo music, but I got to, even when I was a teenager, I was like, some of this stuff's pretty misogynistic, and also it's kind of whiny, and like I was like, there's only so much I can listen to that, you know. Whereas like hardcore seemed like it was kind of this, it was cut from a different cloth, you know. And then there was also political themes in that as well. So I enjoyed that as well. So yeah,
Man.
that was kind of my introduction, and then I kind of just moved to Melbourne when I was 18, and then so it was always, and one of the reasons why I decided to stay in Melbourne and not move interstate with other family was because I really liked the scene here and I wanted to be involved in the music. So yeah, that was kind of, yeah, my sort of trajectory into the hardcore scene.
I think it's so cool, man. I mean, it's funny. You just reminded me of a few other people that I know from Australia. My friend Lisa Spiker, she does like kind of folk indie type stuff. And she's from Melbourne. But then there's another band, they introduced me to Vegemite.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The hardcore band Ceasefire. I don't know if they're still around, but those dudes were the first people to give me Vegemite.
Yeah.
I was like, what the
Vegemite is
heck?
like Vegemite's something you've got to like you spread on very lightly, and you know you got to pair it with butter and stuff. It's not like a fucking Nutella spread where you can like Nutella or like peanut butter where you just like thick. If you're doing that, you got no taste buds or you're a fucking psychopath. I don't know. You know, like fuck that. I'd be worried if someone just like full like dead stared me eating it and it was like thick as fuck, like Vegemite. I'd be like, yo, this guy like I'm scared right now.
Yeah, man. I'll be honest. I kind of found out the hard way, but they're like, yeah, and then they gave it
Oh,
to
they're
me. I'm
probably
like,
like
oh, yeah,
hazing you. Yeah, let's haze the American and be like, yeah, that's how you do it. We do it all, and they're like laughing at you. That's how I would go. I'm like, no, that's
the
fuck with you,
Yankee
man.
gets jacked. I'm like, whoa, this is. I tried to give some to my family. I brought it back, and they're all like, oh, none of them liked it. You have to spread it
Yeah,
like. But the funny thing is, it's like, dude, like I seriously like was like, oh, I didn't want to take your, and they had a whole case of them, bunch of
yeah,
vegan straight edge dudes.
yeah. That's so funny.
Man. So here's another question that I thought that I would ask you. Well, I thought about asking, what other bands were you in? Yeah, I'll ask that. Then I'll save the other one after you ask that.
Yeah,
What
okay.
other bands were you in?
So I was in like my formation band from when I was like maybe like 19 was like this band called Right Mind. It was like a really like a melodic kind of youth crew kind of band. We were kind of like shitty. It was like very demo core, like just real shitty. But it was a good band. We did the band for way too long. We did for like 5 years. But it was a good band to like we loved all that stuff. You know, we loved like me and one of my good mates Dan. We like founded the band. And he was like, oh, you should do vocals. Like, you're always, like, really energetic and, you know, you're well articulate and that kind of stuff. So he helped mentor me a lot when we first started. But we love, like, React record stuff, you know, like Mindsets, like Real Power 7-inch. And then we, like, Betrayed and we liked, you know, like, Fired Up even, like, and like, Go It Alone. And so, like, we loved all that kind of stuff. And melodic, that kind of youth crew and even melodic hardcore, kind of people liked it. But like not a lot of bands would play in it, especially like that more youth crew aspect of it. So like we were kind of that band would just never fit anywhere. So and we weren't that good, I admit, but it was fun. You know, like you do something because you like it, and that's what I like about punk and hardcore. You don't. I think the landscape's changed a little bit, but when I was younger, you didn't always have to be good. Like if you were sincere about it and you enjoyed it and you like brought a certain energy, then like you know, that's all that mattered. I think the landscape's kind of changed a bit just with how things are nowadays. Everything has to be really packaged, like a well packaged product now, just with like Spotify and just the way, like I think it's probably just the oversaturation of bands. Everyone is operating at a certain level to just cut above everything, you know, whereas when I was younger, you could just be a shitty band and people would kind of like rep you in your scene, whereas it doesn't really happen as much now. Like it still kind of does, but it's very different, I would say.
Wow.
Yeah, but and then I did like a 90s metalcore band that was like really influenced by Trial and Indecision called Rebirth. That went pretty well. We got on Carry the Weight Records from UK as well, that was fun. I really liked that. That was a band where I took the lessons that I did in the Right Mind and then sort of applied it to a new band with different members and that kind of stuff. And that's when I started getting like really political. The Right Mind was kind of had some political elements, like we talked about marriage equality and a couple other things, but it was more about just more personal, about finding myself. I added some spirituality in terms of there, like with Buddhism and philosophy and things like that. But yeah, they're the kind of the bands I've done. They're the two, and now I'm doing Persecutor, obviously. Yeah.
So here's a question. One of the things that I remember, you know, just kind of researching you because I'm glad that you hit me up. First of all, thank you. I mean, like, you know, I
No,
was like,
I
wow.
love what you're doing too. Like I like that. I like that you're sort of cataloging a lot of like black diaspora like artists. You know what I mean? Because you know, obviously, and I've talked about this a lot. And we can maybe unpack it later. But like, you know, punk is always one of those subcultures where like it's very whitewashed, but it's like it's like, you know, black people and people of color have been in the scene since the start, you
Yep.
know. But like the stereotype of punk is very like British, you know, like a British orientation. So obviously with Britain, there's like that Eurocentric white stereotype there that like is there. So I always feel like that when you say punk, people always like think punk is for white people. They don't think of it as like for any other people. But actually, that's not the case, and
Oh, no.
that's not the reality. But obviously, it's the world and society we live in. But yeah, so
Yeah.
I really
always
love
tell
what
people,
like yeah, I really love what you're doing. That's why I hit you up, because I was like, this is cool. If there's an opportunity to just have a chat with you, would be cool too. You know, so.
man, I'm honored, man. I'm curious how you found out about me, man. I'm always curious about that, and I was like, that's so cool. And then when I saw, like, when I heard your music, I'm like, dude, no way.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm
I
curious though, like, you know, that's really
I
cool.
think I think I kind of like seek out a lot of uh, like African diaspora sort of like connections and things like that, because obviously growing up in Australia can be is very subject to white supremacy and like it's very whitewashed given white Australia policy and just that sort of, and assimilation policy, and just it's, you know, founded on colonialism and things like that.
Yep.
And so it's still very like the culture can be very white, even though we're very diverse. The institutions are still very white and things like that. So that kind of permeates. And then my own personal family heritage and stuff like that, and having a disconnect with my African heritage for most of my childhood and formative years, I always will seek out sort of those kind of connections, because I've realized there's a value in that and a healing aspect to that, and like sort of consolidating aspects of my identity that weren't there when I was younger. So I'm just trying to go through that journey of healing and solidarity and community building, even if it's across the other side of the world, you know? Like I'm all for like, you know, that kind of Pan-Africanism,
Yeah.
like United Africa kind of thing, you know, because, you know, we all have roots to the same place.
Yep.
So yeah, and like, and one of the things that I sort of, what helped me was, I mean, and I'll just sort of preface that, like, the only representation I ever had when I was a young kid, and knowing that I had like African heritage, it's South African, but African heritage anyway, was like African American representation from like Hollywood and African and US TV. You know what I mean? So like, it's probably why I say motherfucker all the time and stuff like that. But anyway, but yeah, so like I always, yeah, there's that, and then also like reading stuff like with the civil rights movement and also Malcolm X's biography, like especially Malcolm X's biography, like realizing like how internalized like and whitewashed like mentally you can be, especially if you're in more spaces where you're a minority
Yeah.
and you don't have access to certain communities. So like, yeah, I always seeking that shit out, because I always feel like that's really important for me, but then also for just to make sure that other people are aware of it too, because representation is really important. As I sort of said, I didn't have any people that looked like me, and the closest thing was African American, maybe more like white, like lighter skinned African American people. But yeah, that was the only people that looked like me on Australian TV, and I was like, so yeah, I only had that as a basis. So
It's an honor
yeah,
to
I
because,
went
you
really
know, me
deep.
being
I'm sorry, I tend to
oh,
do that.
no, no,
Sorry.
no. Oh, I definitely wanted to talk about that, because I'm going to segue into another question I like to ask, but it really is an honor for me as a foundational Black American, like just to even hear that, because a lot of grassroots stuff happened here. And even as I always say this, some people will say, oh, Black Americans don't have a culture. That's not true. And you're an example of what you just said is an example of that culture. We have a legacy when it comes to just our movements and the things that we stood for to even make this country that we're in America look better than it has been. And so I
Yeah,
really appreciate you even giving that props, you know, really, you know. Um,
yeah,
one of the questions I
and like
was going to ask, oh, I'm sorry.
uh, and things like people don't realize, like, you know, like the Black Panther Party, you know, with like Huey P and stuff. Like there was a Black Panther Party in Australia that was like a chapter, and that was like linked to the
Yep.
Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and that kind of stuff, you know, because, you know, and I'm sure a lot of people who have following this and maybe listening, you know, that are more politically inclined, like everyone knows that, like, you know, there's always solidarity of oppressed peoples, you know, so they're going to like real recognize as real, you know, like you're going to recognize that like my systems of oppression are the same as yours and we need to unite together. So like there's that kind of, I've even got I've got an all power to the people Black Panther like tattoo, you know, because I always found that really inspiring, like that party in particular. But like, yeah, just that kind, like all that kind of stuff is just like, I feel like the more united we are as sort of people, especially oppressed peoples and people of color, like the more we can learn from each other, because they're all similar systems, you know. It's not like they didn't spawn from there is times where they would be isolated systems, but a lot of it, you know, it comes from the same sort of place, which was colonialism and pre-colonialism and things like that and whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I read about those Aboriginal Panthers, and they pretty much looked at themselves as black. I've heard people talk about, they're, you know, like certain white supremacist types will try to basically separate. Oh, they're not black. Oh yeah, really? They pretty much identify as that, and always use those Panthers as an example, because, you know, I've had an honor to even meet a lot of the original Panthers too, as far as like people in my city, and also just like those that were like in Chicago. Like I have a friend of mine who was actually, you know, he was with Fred Hampton. You know, like this guy, you know, like you would, if you saw him now, you probably, because he's just chill, but like if I mentioned his name, you would know who he was. But the thing that I was going to ask you in relation to that, you being born in South Africa, I know that, and then moving to Australia.
Sorry, just to clarify, so my dad was born in South Africa, so I'm first generation South African Australian. So my family migrated here. Yeah. So, but a lot of people, think that, but it's because I talk about it a lot. But that's kind of that thing. I think it's the same thing, and this is where I sort of take from like indigenous thought here, where they talk about like, you know, if you have the link to the culture, like then you are that. And the same with like African American people, you know, like African American people, like, yeah, I'm black, I'm African. Like they don't be like, oh, what, you know, you like from what I've seen, like there's not that distinction between like, oh, like obviously there's African American culture and, you know, you've got history of culture and that kind of stuff, but you still link it back. So like that's kind of why I always just say like, you know, I identify as like South African, because it's a really integral and crucial part of my identity. So yeah. But I want to clarify that like I wasn't born in South Africa. My dad was. My dad moved here in 1980 with my dad's family. Because of apartheid and stuff, they had to flee. So, because it was all the unrest was just getting too hectic, and stuff like that. So, yeah, just wanted to clarify that point, just for integrity's sake. Sorry, because ask the question.
I appreciate that, and even with that, I still have to ask this. And I mean, there's things that I know about South Africa, things that I've read, things that I've even watched. When it comes to like just things that you know about, especially I'm sure your dad has told you, and even things that you recognize in Australia. What would you say as far as like just the very thing that, especially what fuels even the band that you're in, that you're bringing up, that a lot of people don't talk about? I really admire the fact that bands like Zulu are talking about it. There's another Aboriginal fronted band from Australia that brings up about a lot about this. In the Veld, I was talking about one of their albums, you know, talking about certain things when it comes to black struggle. What would you say is the thing that you see that's similar in Australia, and the things that you know about like South Africa and why your father left? You know, and just I remember seeing an interview that you're talking about just you know, the anger that you had against the things that, especially as a person, you know, of color or being a black person, even in hardcore, those things still resonate with you. It's not like you're an other. It's not like your scene has made you different from what you are, you know, because you get some people that'll try to hide behind that scene as if, you know, like they think, like I think the movie Afropunk even covered this too. Like it's almost like you're a special kind a black person, or you're not really black because you're punk, you know, but you're still resonating with the struggles and the things that we've gone through as a people.
Yeah.
You know, like how, I'm sorry, it's a long question.
Yeah, no, that's right. No, so I feel like, I guess, like, the fact is that, like, the commonality is that every person of color lives in a white supremacist society, and thanks to colonization, that's a global phenomenon. And a lot of us, like through slavery or through like forced migration, you know, and like fleeing from destabilized regions and stuff like that, we have to live in former colonies, which were founded on white colonialism. You know what I mean? So the institutions that the infrastructure of that society is white, right? So no matter where you are always going to be othered, because the system and the processes and the institutions are all designed to benefit white people and put them at the top of the social hierarchy. So like, and then you go into like subcultures, right? Like, you know, punk and hardcore and all that kind of stuff. And they're very progressive for their time and their context and stuff like that. But they're not, they don't, this is the thing. People think that, like, we're in a subculture, but we're not in a fucking vacuum. Like, we don't, like, they don't exist in a vacuum. The values and the beliefs, the subconscious values and beliefs as well, permeate into these spaces as well. And that's what people struggle to realize, the fact that, like, you know, and even the fact that people don't really understand, like, how oppressive systems work and how they're internalized. Like, for example, we live in a white supremacist society globally. Everyone has internalized racism and white supremacy within them. Even me and you. You know what I mean? That shows through colorism. That's shows through, like, self-doubt and that kind of stuff, because we are constantly socialized into that white is the top standard. So, like, I feel like that's the most common thing. I could draw parallels between, like, the, you know, White Australia policy, which is a completely racist, xenophobic policy that didn't allow people of colour into Australia because it was a British white colony for a long time. They segregated Aboriginal people, and that actually, there is actual evidence. It's not hard, concrete evidence, but there is circumstantial evidence to say that actually the South African apartheid system, the white government officials got the inspiration from visiting Australia and seeing Australia's treatment of Aboriginal people, and then migrating that and finessing and refining that process into a legislative segregational system, which is apartheid. You know, so, like, there's that similarity, and then obviously there was segregation in America for black people, but not just black people, for other people as well. You know, colored is a broad term, and was a broad term for a long time. It encapsulated other people of color, not just black African Americans as well. And then colored is a term in South Africa that was like mixed race. So, like, my dad's family is colored South African, which is like the mixed race. And, like, that, for people that don't know, is like an amalgamation of indigenous South African people, so the Khoisan people, black Bantu, so like Zulu people and Ndebele and Xhosa and things like that. And then but also you have Indian, Malay, like Southeast Asian, because these are all symptoms of colonial and slavery and stuff like that. You know, like, they pulled all these people into South Africa, and then, you know, people you know, like, mix and stuff like that, and colored South Africans are like a mix of all those people. But like, yeah, I kind of, like, so I guess, like, the similarity is, like, that we're all operating in a white supremacist global society, and and all those oppressive structures. And then obviously with intersectionality and things like that, you know, the more intersections you have, the more oppressed you're going to be. So, you know, like, non-male people, you know, like, in the queer community and, like, that kind of stuff. You know, like, Malcolm X quote is, like, the most oppressed person in America is the African American woman. You know what I mean? And that just shows that, like, you know, the further down you are in terms of, like, not further down, I guess that kind of works. Like, further down you are in terms of like, your status in society, the more oppression you're going to experience, you know? So I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. I understand that. I mean, for me, you know, I was lucky enough to have my mom teach me a lot, but of course we still live in a system that was built off of white supremacy. People think that we're attacking white people when we're saying that we're not. We're talking about a system built for white people, by white people, for the benefit of whites only. And there's so many, Neely Fuller talks about it in so many different areas of activity. And the thing is, there's other white people that will even tell you that. You know, I've had friends even talk about that. But there's always some things that we would have to unlearn as far as like just our own self-image. Black Americans specifically, I think, in my opinion, have definitely shown that fight, and that's why I always tell people, and I'm giving props to anyone else that has joined in within that fight. People like Stokely Carmichael, or Kwame Ture, who's one of my heroes, and just many different people. You know, there's a lot, but the thing is, it's like even with such consciousness, we still have to be aware of what's the system around us. You know, and like for me, yes, I'm spiritual as well, and I love the fact that like you have people like Malcolm X and Dr. King. People always try to pit them against each other, but you can't. They had two different things, but they weren't that different if you look at it.
No, that's right, and that's the thing, and that's the issue with when like figures are like whitewashed or things are taken out of context to like to fit their rhetoric or their agenda, because like obviously Malcolm X was a bit more, I would say like he was the more like really forthright, the more masculine sort of approach to like, you know, the real pragmatic, like this is what needs to happen, like I'm not going to compromise on things. And Martin Luther King, he was the same, you know, he was, you know, he talked about socialism and like communism and all that kind of stuff as well, and was starting, you know, and critiqued like the capitalist system as well. And that's the thing where like the further you start looking at oppressive structures, the more you realize that the people, no matter what race, no matter like what class, or well maybe some class, but like creed and stuff like that, we all are operating and oppressed under the same systems, you know what I mean? And that's where like it gets taken out of context a lot of the time, you know, because the more you start going down the rabbit hole with like all the different sort of the way our society works, the more you're going to realize that the more we have united struggles together, you know, like that class consciousness aspect. So yeah, I think I think people get sort of you can acknowledge people's differences and differences of approaches, and people, you know, like you can't have like a monolithic approach to everything all the time. It's not going to work. I mean, that's kind of like why we're in situations we're in, you know, like, you know, everything's very top down all the time. But if we have different approaches to cover lots of different things, I think that's always better, because that's more human, it's more holistic, you know, it's actually more natural, rather than like trying to confine everything into a single box or a single narrative. Like that's not natural, that doesn't work, you know what I mean? So and then we could probably go into like anarchist sort of thought and stuff like that as well, but maybe we'll skip that. But yeah.
Speaking of, we have a few guys. Shouts to Jang Lee, Vegan Peace Punk from Resist and Exist. I see you out there, brother. And who else? Somebody.
Hello.
A brother was saying garage and punk is huge in Melbourne at the moment, but the great for the city, but very white scene. Yeah. That brings up another question. Oh, I'm sorry. What was that?
No, I'm just moving my arm. Sorry.
Have you guys got any like any opposition for just being the band that you are, as far as like just things that you say, and also the kind of stuff that you write about?
I think sometimes this is where like the politics of politeness is often weaponized. Is like we're a very uncompromising band, and sometimes all people, even people of color as well, sometimes get a bit uncomfortable how unapologetic I am when I'm talking about these things or exploring these things. But I'm very like deliberate in that, because I'm like, well, I've been polite. I've sort of had to assimilate or had to like quieten myself or whatever like that for a long time just to appease other people. And this is my outlet, so I'm going to do it. And it's a voice that's like it's not unique. And that's the thing. And I heard people like, oh, you know, like I say the N-word, like I say nigger and stuff, because I used to get called all the time when I was a kid, you know, like really badly. So, and then, you know, like adopting like a lot of that sort of approaches in America, like with like American sort of like politics and vernacular about taking words back and sort of putting power onto them. I do that, but because like African diaspora people are not like there's not we're like a minority here, like it's very uncomfortable for people, you know. But then it's kind of weird though, because like if I say it up on stage and I can see people kind of visibly get uncomfortable sometimes, but then they'll go into their car after the gig and they'll put on like Mobb Deep or Nas or, you know, Wu-Tang, and they're fine with that. But it's like, it's very interesting. But I think that yeah, I think we don't really hadn't got like really a staunch opposition where people are trying to shut us down, or like neo-Nazis like coming to shows and stuff like that. I think it's more, I think we really touch the nerve of people, like more like left-leaning, like liberal people, or people that like really haven't reflected enough on their privilege and been like, oh, why does this make me actually uncomfortable? Not, oh, this is a legitimate lived experience of like the singer and the people in the band. So like, maybe I should just put aside my comfortability and just listen to what they have to say. So I sometimes it's still there sometimes, and I think that's the thing where like, that's why like I do this, because it's for me. But then I also know that I want to be that person that I didn't have when I was growing up, that representation. And then also I've had really lovely conversation with people after shows, people of color, where they come up and they're like, some of them have been crying, or like they've said like, I felt like when you talked about stuff, like it fucking hit a nerve. Like I didn't even think about it or wasn't aware about it, but it just spoke to me. And I'm like, that's why I'm doing it, because like we don't talk about it. I'm tired of the fucking same like people in bands who mostly are white people getting up there talking about the same fucking beige cookie cutter issues for like the last fucking 50 years. Like, shut the fuck up. Think of something else. Like, there is a place for everything, and I'm not saying everyone has to be political, but like, it just gets fatiguing, you know what I mean? Especially if like your whole life is like, you have to view it like, not in a white lens, but like the content that's coming at you all the time is very white tailored all the time. So
Man.
yeah, I think also like sometimes when the situations happen in the scene, or you feel a bit othered or ostracized, like it's not just that incident, and that's where white people and people who aren't people of color, or maybe are not necessarily white, but they benefit from white privilege. They don't really understand that just because one incident happened doesn't mean I'm not reacting to that incident there and then. I'm reacting from a visceral and emotional and a psychological place for my whole life. It's not just that one incident. Yeah. It's like, this has brought up a whole lifetime of shit that I've just had to process. You know, like example here, if I want to go to therapy, and I've been to therapy before, most of the time the therapists are white. So how am I going to unpack like 34, almost 35 years of racism that I've experienced, you know, inside my family unit, outside of my family unit, like internally in myself? Like, how am I meant to unpack that with someone? They're not going to be able to empathize. So, and that's the thing where, like, unless you've got really strong communities, which there are in some places, but, you know, the more hyper-capitalist we are, the more individualized we are, that community care and that community support can shy away. You know what I mean? Yeah. And, like, that's where, like, people don't understand that, like, not everyone has that social capital or the access to these supports and people to be able to empathize with the feelings that you're doing, because they're like, oh, that person said something that's really bad, that would be really like hard for you, or like that like kind of fucking sucked. But then they just don't think about it. Oh, like, you know, they like, people give you sympathy, or like they try and empathize a bit, but they can't empathize with you because they're not you. They haven't lived your life and dealt with the shit that you've dealt with, you know. So yeah, that's why I kind of do this band, because it's my catharsis, you know, like, yeah.
Have you guys found any fellow travelers? I know there's one band, and I can't remember what that band was. And they kind of there was a band, Aboriginal. What was it?
There was a band called Dispossessed from Sydney. There's also a band called Nerve Damage as well.
Man, I wish I could remember. I don't think it was Dispossessed, but are there any other bands?
Maybe. Huh? Was it Homesick? Homesick? Was it Homesick?
Wow. it's kicking me in the head, man. Shame on me. I heard them like maybe once, and I'm like, wow. And it was like, because they were talking about a lot of the same things. It was led by a black indigenous, like, I don't, Corey, Australian type dude, like, and have you guys found any, I mean, like, do you guys play with bands that are kind of similar in that regard?
Yeah, we do try to. Yeah, like if we can always play with like other bands that have members with that are like non-white and people of color, like we're always gonna enjoy that because you can just there's that thing where, as I said before, like real recognize real. You can just give each other a look and you like kind of know you get it. You know what I mean? So when there's always that avenue for that, there is bands. It's just like depends on like what scene you're in or like the city and like touring and all that kind of stuff. So like it just really depends. But every chance we can, we definitely will try and prioritize or play with them. So yeah.
Who are your favorite bands that you listen to that are from where you are and that you like to play with, or just that you want to even give a shout out to?
All right, I'm gonna think. Let's have a think. Fuck. Well, one of my close friends who's also coloured South African, Kat. She's a good friend of mine, and some other members of the band as well. They do a band called Gravitate, and then she also did another band called Boundless as well. So yeah, they're sort of somewhat, like Kat's a really good friend of mine, and we like always unpack about experiences of like being South African in Australia and things like that. Nerve Damage is one that a band, they're on Last Ride Records. I think their last thing was on Last Ride Records. Shal the singer, he's Indigenous, and like I always like enjoy seeing his performances and what he talks about as well. Homesick were an old band that sort of unpacked a lot of Aboriginal issues, and I'm friends with some of those guys. There's a whole bunch. Dispossessed was a big band for me that I really liked. I did a lot of artwork for them because I do art as well.
Oh, wow.
And so like they were like the staunch like bands where they were like, yeah, they were kind of probably on the same level as Persecutor in terms of like being unapologetically political and just talking about the lived experience. There's a lot of other bands, but I should have wrote a list. I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. There's a neighbor, my friend, she's Samoan, and she had me check out a gal that was how could I forget? They're Fijian. She's a front woman of it's like a Fijian punk band, and there was an article written about them. Man, I should have actually, like, I'm just thinking about this right now because I forgot it. And one of these days I'm gonna do an entry on them too, but I forgot the name of the band. And she was telling me like, yeah, they were on, like, it was like a few years back. Do you have any, like, are you connected with bands from like those neighboring islands? And I forget the name of, shame on me, man. Oh, this is what happens when you're 49, man.
Nothing sort of pops out of my head, but as again, I probably should have wrote a list. But so shame on both.
No, I'm sorry, I forgot. I'll have to. I'm gonna look that up and see if you know about those cats. So
yeah,
man.
Yeah.
So a few things, and I know you got to get back to recording. What are you guys working on now? And will you guys ever come like do a world tour? Like,
yeah. So we're recording. Like I'm at literally like the smoko area of the jam area where we're recording. But we're recording a 4-track EP. It's called Global Prison Experiment, and it'll be on To Live a Lie Records again. I'm in the talks with them at the moment, so unofficial announcement. It'll just be on cassette tape, and we're doing it just a bit of an EP. We've got a bit of a lineup change. We've got a new drummer, and our old drummer used to be a main songwriter. So we're using this EP to sort of try, like, we wrote some songs and we're like, oh, this is kind of the direction we want to head in with like multiple people writing and stuff. So we're going to use this as like a template for some like a bigger release. Maybe we might try and work on something next year, like an LP or something. But we're we're also in the process of trying to book a Asia tour. So like a more like a Northeast Asia tour. So like, cause Scott, our bass player, he's from Taiwan.
Oh
So
wow.
we'll probably be playing Taiwan. Our original guitarist who did the demo, he wrote the demo. He's from Singapore, so we'll be playing there as well.
Sick.
So in the process of like, emailing people and shit, and then we're trying to lock in Japan as well, but that's a pretty hot destination at the moment. So it's kind of see how we go there. But yeah, I mean, we might try and go to Malaysia as well. So we're definitely
Oh,
trying to
Malaysia.
like,
Wow.
like do like internationally. It'd be cool to play America. Like that'd be a cool idea, but like it's hard to for like a mid-level band like we are, like a lower to mid-level band. It's kind of hard to break into the American scene, I guess. But and especially this day and age as well, you either have to go like viral or like you have to be a part of like really big scenes, or you're just lucky that like your music's awesome and everyone sort of picks you up and you have that momentum going to really break it from Australia. Like, like Australia's kind of like the backwater of like the Western countries, So, but like, it wherever we can play, we would love to, and hopefully we can lock in a pretty good like Asia tour. And I just being able to play in a band and tour internationally is like a bucket list thing. So I'm pretty grateful with whatever happens, So
That's cool. I know Malaysia, dude. Like I think that in the band Warm Rot from there too.
I'm
Either
not too sure. I'm
either there or
not the best.
Indonesia.
I'm not one of those hardcore guys that has like the encyclopedic knowledge of like of all that kind of stuff. I'm maybe more politics for me.
Man, that's so cool. Shoot, I hope you come over. If you ever come to Los Angeles, like, dude, let me know. And it'd
Yeah,
be cool to stay in contact. And like
yeah,
just I'm 49 years old, still into the same crazy, chaotic, blast beats, all that. I love it,
yeah,
man. And so I'm like, it's just something about that music. It just gets me like rolling. Like some people, I just noise. I'm like, you don't understand. You really don't understand. I mean, I like all kinds of stuff. I'm a musician myself. I played literally all kinds of music, even country. Not in the country, but I played it. But I just love like just that kind of hardcore, like, and just really like fast, loud, chaotic, and just spontaneous. Like,
that's
and I really
right.
appreciate you like just even taking the time to rock with us. One more questions, and I know you got to get back to rolling.
Yeah.
What advice or words of wisdom do you have for the audience?
So, so, um, so I just, sorry, I'm just on. That's right. So, words of wisdom. I think like what you like. Like just if you're gonna like whatever music, what do you like? Don't try and like be someone you're not. That old Negative Approach song. I think it's Negative Approach. Yeah, be something. Why be something you're not? Like what you like. I think there's always a scope to learn and be better people. Like I'm always learning. I think that's like the beauty of being a human being, is like just to be able to learn and constantly grow. Like, perfection is a colonial idea. It's not, so get rid of that shit. We're always going to make mistakes and whatever, but if you're genuine and try and be kind and just and sort of try to work on being the best person you can be every day, and we're not always going to nail it, that's all we can do, like as human beings, just try and live the best life you can be, and be aware of how you impact others as well. I think that's probably the things that I would sort of give with leave the chat with. Yeah.
Well, shoot, I forgot to ask. A few people chimed in, and I think I saw the homie Jared Hassan, Mr. World Eater, also Shrine of the Black Madonna. Hopefully, we'll have him on soon. Shouts to you. If you're ever in New York, look that brother up. He's a good dude. And shouts to all of you guys that have even came out, man. Like, I really appreciate you guys for coming out for this interview. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah. Any questions before I kick it?
We'll give it like a few minutes. We see you, Sally Wally. I was hoping my friend Aiden would come out because he has some ties in South Africa too.
Oh,
But yeah, man, shoot, this is awesome.
I think
Anybody?
I'll leave everyone with a quote. This is from Steve Biko. The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed.
Rest in peace, memory eternal is Stephen Biko.
Yeah.
Man. But say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. I just had to give that a shout out.
So it's the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So for people who don't know Steve Biko, he was an anti-apartheid activist. He was a black South African, and he was he was imprisoned pretty up on trumped up charges, and then died in prison from beatings. And he was someone who founded the Black Consciousness Movement in South Africa. So that was about uniting all people of African and even non-African heritage who are oppressed by the apartheid regime. He wanted to unite everyone together because he recognized that we all had the same oppressor, basically. So I think South Africa and the world would have been a lot different if he had lived and whatnot. But yeah. It is what it is. You know, you can kill the revolutionary, but you can't kill the revolution.
Kill the revolution. That's right. Said by the brother Fred Hampton. May he rest in peace too. Memory eternal.
Yeah.
Well, shoot, you guys, and man, thanks a lot. Did I say your name right? Is your last name Gietzmann?
No, it's Gietzmann.
Gietzmann. Yeah, I messed up.
Tyronne Gietzmann. Yeah. It's like an amalgamation of like German and something, and like maybe Dutch or something. I don't know. It's just some South African thing. There's a lot of like German and Dutch and all that kind of stuff over there. So yeah.
I just wanted to make sure, like it's funny. You and the gal that I'm gonna be interviewing tomorrow are the first international people, and both of you guys have. I mean, she's in Kenya. Shouts to Mildred Ashok. I don't even know if I'm saying her name right. So like. We got, like straight up cats that like, you guys are the first internationals that I've interviewed.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the time, and I'll look forward to chatting to you in the future.
Yes. Thank you, man. God bless and be safe.
Have a good one.
Great recording, man. Peace.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah, Africa. So, yeah.
Right, homie.
Bye.
Peace. Bye.